Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines. Palestinian rescuers say an airstrike hit a Gaza City school turned shelter, killing at least 20 displaced people today. It marks one of the deadliest strikes in days as Israel intensifies its offensive. Donald Trump blasts Vladimir Putin after Russia unleashes its biggest air assault of the war, firing 367 drones and missiles on Ukrainian cities, leaving at least 12 people dead. Speaking from New Jersey, Trump says, "I'm not happy with Putin. He's killing a lot of people." King Charles begins a two-day visit to Canada today, set to open Parliament in Ottawa for the first time in nearly 7 decades. The trip signals strong ties with Ottawa amid US pressure and Trump's growing interest in the North. French President Emmanuel Macron inks a major deal for 20 Airbus jets in Hanoi today as part of a wider push to boost French influence amid US trade tensions. The visit marks the first by a French leader to Vietnam in nearly a decade. Donald Trump agrees to push back a massive tariff hike on EU goods to July the 9th after a good call with European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen. Trump warns he's still ready to impose 50% tariffs if a deal isn't reached swiftly. Leaders from across Southeast Asia gather in Kuala Lumpur for the 46th ASEAN Summit to tackle trade tensions, the Myanmar crisis and South China Sea disputes. Malaysia hosts amid tight security and back-to-back talks with the CGC and China. With the South Korean election approaching, Liberal candidate Lee Jae-myung vows to restore military hotlines with North Korea and repair strained ties with China if elected. He calls Seoul-Beijing relations the worst in years and promises stability. North Korea arrests a top military official after a 5,000-ton warship tips over during the launch, sparking Kim Jong-un's fury over what he calls a criminal act. 4 officials are now in custody as Pyongyang blames irresponsibility and unreal science. Our top story today. 13 people were killed as Russia launched a record number of drones against Ukraine overnight, according to officials. The attacks came as the two countries completed their biggest prisoner swap since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion in February of 2022, with 1,000 captured soldiers and civilian prisoners sent back by each side. Ukraine's emergency services have described an atmosphere of terror amid a second straight night of Russian airstrikes. Those killed in the latest Russian strikes also included children in the northwestern region of Zhytomyr, as per officials' statements. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has called his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin crazy for his attacks on Ukrainian cities and warned that any attempt at a total takeover of Ukraine would lead to the downfall of Russia. Trump has also criticized Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and accused him of doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. This comes after Trump told reporters that he was not happy with Putin over the latest Russian offensive. On Sunday, Trump also said he was absolutely considering increasing US sanctions on Russia in response to the latest violence. We now move over to the Middle East, where in the latest turn of events in the Israel-Gaza conflict, Palestinian rescue teams reported that an Israeli airstrike early this morning killed at least 20 people at a school in Gaza City as Israel continues its campaign against Hamas. Gaza's civil defense reported that 21 people were also injured when Fahmi al-Jawawi school in the Al-Daraj neighborhood was struck at dawn this morning. Meanwhile, at least 22 people were killed and dozens more were wounded in yesterday's Israeli airstrikes across Gaza. The International Committee of the Red Cross also confirmed the deaths of 2 of its staff members, Ibrahim Eid and Ahmad Abul Hilal, in a strike on their home in Khan Yunis. Eid worked as a weapons contaminator officer and Abu Hilal was a security guard at the ICRC field hospital in Rafah. Now let's hear from a close friend of the 2 ICRC staff.
تم استهدافهم بشكل مباشر في وقت فراغهم القصير. هم كان عملهم 16 ساعة في ال 24 ساعة كل يوم. جهدهم كان لا يتوانى عن خدمة الناس، وكانوا معرفين لدى الكل انهم صليب احمر. واحد سكيورتي صليب امن صليب، واحد منسق العلاقات العامة لدى الصليب. كان يتعامل طول عمره ابراهيم عيد يروح ويجي مع الوفود، واحمد كان طول عمره يحميهم، شغال امن للصليب، يعني ما بشكلوا اي خطر على الاحتلال. تم استهدافهم بشكل مباشر وهم قاعدين في وقت الراحة تبعهم.
We now move from the battlefield to the diplomatic one, where US Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visited the Western Wall in Jerusalem shortly after her arrival in Israel, where she was greeted by US Ambassador Mike Huckabee. Meanwhile, the head of a US-backed group, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, unexpectedly resigned, adding uncertainty to the future of their aid efforts. Executive Director Jake Wood explained he could no longer stay as the foundation failed to operate in line with humanitarian principles. On another front, lawmakers from Europe and Arab nations met in Madrid yesterday to discuss the ongoing war in Gaza. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa addressed the gathering, calling for more US involvement. Let's hear his statement.
Well, obviously, the United States is a very important stakeholder in the Middle East region. We would like to see them engaged as much as possible. Their efforts in terms of Gaza ceasefire is appreciated, but we also want to see them hopefully in New York for the International Peace Conference. So hopefully more engagement, positive engagement by the U.S. will help bring peace and stability for the region. We want to see a ceasefire in Gaza. We want to see an end of occupation as soon as possible, and we want to hopefully move as fast as possible to peace where Palestine and Israel can coexist and hopefully bring stability and security for the whole region.
Egypt's Foreign Minister Badil Abdelati discussed the need for applying maximum pressure on Israel. Let's take a listen to his remarks.
Unfortunately, there is a lack of political will from the Israeli side. This is the main problem, and we will keep trying. We will apply maximum pressure. We will continue to exert our maximum efforts in order to push for a ceasefire, because we managed to succeed on the 19th of January and we reached the ceasefire, and it worked because we managed to release 21 hostages and at that time, and to allow the flow of humanitarian and medical aid into Gaza. But it was Israel who walked out of this agreement, and they continued their own attacks and aggressions on Gaza.
We're now joined by Jayant Krishna, who is a senior fellow at the CSIS, to discuss this in more detail. Jayant, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Over the past week or so, we've seen Western leaders come out and speak out against the Israeli government's action for the first time. There's 2 clear camps emerging here. You see the likes of France and the UK and Canada in one, and then you have obviously a very strong alliance between the US and Israel still remaining. Can I get your thoughts on the diplomatic sides and the growing opposition for the current Israel government's actions?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, there have been a lot of hostilities between Israel and Gaza. If you look at in the last few months, almost 54,000 people have been killed and 122,000 people have been injured, and purely more than the war, it's a huge humanitarian crisis, that exists, And today, as luck would have had it, the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Christy Noem is there in Israel and is likely to meet Prime Minister Netanyahu. Although it is said that she's primarily there for the Jerusalem Day celebrations, and she's the first U.S. Cabinet Secretary level person to participate in such a celebration in Israel. And later she'll also be a part of a memorial service, for the two Israeli embassy staff members who were shot dead in Washington D.C. So I think, I think also President Trump has been trying to declare some kind of negotiate and finally declare some kind of a ceasefire in Gaza. And, sometimes it appears that US is also a bit frustrated despite being very friendly with Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel. They have been pestering Netanyahu, and the US has also been in an indirect touch with Hamas. So I think US has largely been telling Israel that, you have to delay your ground operations and, facilitate humanitarian aid distribution in Gaza and renewing the negotiation process. Even today there has been a huge strike by Israel, where a school converted into, a shelter has killed 25 people. And you rightly said that, European Union and many European nations are also up in arms against Israel. Very recently, the Spain in Madrid, to be precise, they hosted a representative from Europe as well as the Arab nations. And the idea is to pester and, put pressure on Israel to end the war in Gaza. And not only that, they have gone to the extent of going for a, arms embargo against Israel. They have talked about, introducing economic sanctions against people who oppose a two-nation negotiated settlement, to the crisis. And also, a halt to Israel's inhuman and, to what may seem to some a senseless war which has been going on in Palestine. So I think, trade is also a very, very important weapon. So the meeting that happened in Spain, they've also talked about could there be a possibility of European Union suspending trade with Israel altogether. So I think these are huge, issues. And in the process, we also hear that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation chief, Jake Wood, has also resigned, saying lots of difficulties he's facing and the extent of, conflict which is there, and the fact, the kind of food, the kind of shelter, the kind of medical aid people in Gaza need, and the way the kind, and let's understand this group is backed both by US as well as Israel. And he has quit largely because what he says that there's a lack of independence, humanitarian, bent of mind, and impartiality.
Apologies, I just want to have a little input here. We've obviously seen this bombing on this school today that's killed 20 people reportedly, many of whom are reportedly children. This kind of adds to the ever-growing list of case studies. Obviously, we just had a couple of days ago as well, 9 out of 10 of these doctors' children were killed. We've seen opposition grow and world leaders be more vocal opposition against Israel. Do you think Israel here is at a diplomatic tipping point if these horrific, frankly horrific stories, case studies keep being shown to the public?
Yeah, I feel so. Israel is at some kind of a tipping point because Europe has been mounting a lot of pressure on Israel, and US, which has largely been friendly to Israel, is also frustrated now, and and they're not very happy. So this kind of a killing happening on a day when the US Homeland Security Secretary is in Israel. So I think it is very unfortunate, and if this way Israel continues to annoy the rest of the world, it's not going to be happy for it in any sense, because in today's day and age, different nations of all over the world, need to coexist, need to have, amity, need to have, wise sensibility prevailing, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And some negotiation happens, some discussion happen. It's almost like 1 foot forward and 2 backwards. So that's what, and if it happens, they would lose all sympathizers, and in due course of time, perhaps the US as well, if this continues to happen. So I completely agree with you. They are at a tipping point when it comes to, their diplomatic relations with the rest of the world.
Giant Krishna, thank you very much for your insight and joining us on the programme. We now move to the southeast, where Asian leaders have gathered in Kuala Lumpur for a crucial ASEAN summit focused on reviving peace talks in Myanmar and addressing trade strategies amid global uncertainty. Myanmar remains in crisis after a 2021 military coup ousted Aung San Suu Kyi's elected government. The region's leaders are trying to bring the junta and opposition to the negotiating table. Malaysia, currently chairing ASEAN, is taking a mediation role, pushing for separate talks with both sides and proposing a permanent envoy to handle the crisis. Meanwhile, the bloc is also confronting a wave of trade uncertainty sparked by US President Donald Trump's tariff threats. Leaders are looking for ways to protect regional economies. The Myanmar junta remains banned from the summit, but recent closed-door talks have renewed hope for diplomatic process. Discussions with China and Gulf nations are also on the agenda in Kuala Lumpur. Now we move over to Europe, where a major tariff clash between the US and the EU is on hold for now. President Donald Trump has agreed to delay a 50% tariff on EU imports until July the 9th. The decision comes after a call from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who asked for more time to reach a trade deal. The tariff threat, originally set for June the 1st, had shaken global markets and sparked fresh tensions between Washington and Brussels. Trump had earlier said he wasn't interested in a deal, insisting the 50% tariff would stand. But after Sunday's call, Trump backed off, saying he and von der Leyen had a very nice conversation and that talks would now move swiftly. The euro and the US dollar rose against safe haven currencies like the yen and Swiss franc after the extension was announced. Trump's trade policies have long challenged allies, and while deals have been made with China and the UK, ties with the EU remain strained, with just weeks left to avoid a major escalation. We move back to Southeast Asia, where French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived in Vietnam for his first official visit to the country, the first actually by a French leader in nearly a decade. During his stop in Hanoi, Macron announced a series of strategic deals with Vietnam, including a significant agreement for 20 new Airbus planes to be purchased by airline Vietjet. Other key agreements spanned defence cooperation, satellite technology, nuclear energy, rail infrastructure and Safoni vaccine partnerships. Macron's visit comes amid mounting trade tensions between the US and the European Union and growing pressure on Vietnam to increase American imports. Speaking in Hanoi, Macron reaffirmed France's commitment to a rules-based world order and freedom of navigation, a message closely watched by Beijing. Let's take a listen in to what the French president had to say.
C'est bien une nouvelle page qui s'écrit entre nos deux pays et dans tous les domaines économiques, scientifiques, technologiques, industriels, militaires, stratégiques, culturels, universitaires, une volonté d'écrire une page encore plus ambitieuse de la relation entre le Vietnam et la France, entre l'ASEAN et l'Union européenne. Et j'ai redit ici à Monsieur le Président notre volonté d'avancer sur chacun de ces sujets et au fond d'une vision commune de ce que doit être l'ordre international, la stabilité dans nos deux.
He also paid tribute to the victims of the Indochina War and met Vietnam's President Leong Chiong and Communist Party leader Tu Lam. Macron now heads to Indonesia and Singapore as part of his wider Southeast Asia tour. We We now move to North America, where King Charles III and Queen Camilla are set to arrive in Canada for a 2-day visit, seen as bringing a message of support for the country in the face of threats and taunts from US President Donald Trump. The King will read the speech from the throne to Canada's Parliament on Tuesday, making it the first time a monarch has delivered this speech in almost 50 years. It is expected to include a defence of Canada's sovereignty and to reject claims it should be taken over by the United States. Prime Minister Mark Carney had invited the royal couple and will hold a meeting with them during their stay in Ottawa. There will be a ceremonial welcome at the airport in Ottawa and meetings with community groups, which are expected to include representatives of Canada's First Nation communities. The King will also meet Canada's first Indigenous Governor-General, Mary Simon. This is the King and Queen's first visit to Canada since the start of their reign, after a planned trip last year was cancelled because of King Charles's cancer diagnosis. We have some breaking news now. Allegations against Israel over the Gaza strike are under scrutiny. A photo claimed to show the children of a Gaza doctor killed in an airstrike has been found to be from a March report about a different family. The duplicate image, used in multiple reports, raises concerns of media manipulation aimed at discrediting Israel, according to reports. We now move over to the Indo-Pacific, where in North Korea a senior official has been arrested over the failed launch of a new warship, a move that's drawn the fury of leader Kim Jong-un. State media says Ri Hyung-song, a top figure in the munitions industry department and member of the Central Military Commission, is the fourth person detained after the 5,000-ton destroyer tipped over during its launch, damaging its hull. Kim slammed the incident as a criminal act that shamed the nation, blaming what he called carelessness and poor science. 3 other officials at the Chongjin shipyard were also arrested over the weekend. Analysts say the harsh response signals Kim's determination to push ahead with naval upgrades, even in the face of public failures, underscoring his commitment to advancing North Korea's military capabilities. Let's now move south now, where South Korea's presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung has pledged to restore the inter-Korean military hotline and improve communication with North Korea if elected. He emphasized on diplomacy centered on national interests. He also vowed to strengthen the South Korea-US alliance, aiming to rebuild trust damaged under the previous administration. Lee also highlighted plans to enhance trilateral cooperation with the US and Japan, while managing relations with China and Russia very carefully. On North Korea, Lee promised to pursue denuclearization and tension reduction through multi-layered international cooperation, focusing on dialogue that resonates with the public. He stressed humanitarian support for those affected by the division and insisted that North Korea policy must not be politicized. We turn to the United States now, where President Donald Trump is demanding the names and nationalities of all international students enrolled at Harvard University. Trump claimed the US gives Harvard billions and says it's time the school revealed who its foreign students are. Let's take a listen in to what he said.
Look, part of the problem with Harvard is that there are about 31%, almost 31% of foreigners coming to Harvard. We give them billions of dollars, which is ridiculous. We do grants, which we're probably not going to be doing much grants anymore to Harvard. But they're 31%, but they refuse to tell us who the people are. We want to know who the people. Now, a lot of the foreign students we wouldn't have a problem with. I'm not going to have a problem with foreign students, but it shouldn't be 31%. It's too much, because we have Americans that want to go there and to other places, and they can't go there because you have 31% foreign. Now,
this comes just days after a federal judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration's order revoking Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students, an action Harvard called a blatant violation of the US Constitution. Trump also claimed that no foreign governments fund Harvard and suggested US grants could be reconsidered. However, he did not say how the information would be used or which agency would handle it. The White House has not yet responded to requests for comment. We now move to South America, where in Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro's ruling party is eyeing a landslide victory in the legislative and regional elections. The main opposition, led by Maria Cortina Machado, has called for a boycott, labelling the election a farce. Among dozens arrested in the days leading up to the vote was opposition figure Juan Pablo Guanipa, accused of leading a terrorist network to sabotage the election. Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello claims Juan was connected to foreign-backed mercenaries, which prompted the closure of the border with Colombia. With over 400,000 security forces deployed nationwide, tensions ran high. Yet voter turnout was projected at just 16%, as many Venezuelans chose to stay home. Last year's presidential vote sparked deadly unrest, with 28 killed and hundreds jailed. We now move on once again. In Suriname, the two main political parties are entering coalition talks after a tight parliamentary election. The country, home to just 600,000 people, has recently discovered major oil deposits, including a $10.5 billion investment by Total Energies to develop an offshore field with an estimated 220,000 barrels per day. With nearly all votes counted, incumbent President Chan Sankoti's centrist VHP party and rival Jennifer Simon's leftist National Democratic Party are tied, each winning around 17 to 18 seats in the 51-seat parliament. Neither has a clear majority, leading to expected coalition talks with smaller parties. Suriname hopes the oil wealth will boost prosperity while maintaining commitments to climate goals. A unique royalties for everyone fund will give citizens direct shares of oil revenues once production starts in 2028. For many voters, this election represents a chance for improved roads, security, education and employment. We now move to South Asia, where Bangladesh's interim leader Mohammad Yunus held a second day of intense talks with multiple political parties, aiming to build unity and ease the country's political power struggles. Yunus is leading the caretaker government until elections are held and has called on rival parties to fully support his leadership. Since former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was ousted in the August of 2024 by a student-led revolt, the country of 170 million people has faced political turmoil. Yunus met with around 20 party leaders after lengthy talks with major political groups, including those protesting against the government. Among the leaders who met with Yunus was Mamul Haq of the Islamist Khalifat-e-Maljish party. Haq said the discussions focused on addressing the ongoing crisis. Yunus stressed the importance of national unity to ensure stability, free elections, justice and reforms to prevent any return to authoritarianism. Yunus also met with leaders of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which is pushing for elections by December. According to Bangladeshi media and military sources, Army Chief General Waqar-uz-Zaman also supported this timeline, aligning with BNP demands. Yunus returned from exile in August 2024. He then came back at the request of protesters. He has promised to implement democratic reforms before holding elections. Yunus says the elections will be held by June 2026 at the latest. Former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has launched a sharp attack on interim leader Mohammad Yunus, accusing him of selling the country to the United States. Hasina claims Yunus is ruling with backing of militant groups and slammed the ban on her party, the Awami League, calling it unconstitutional. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.